What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about the stealth meta in Warzone. And what I mean by this is, since the launch of Warzone pretty much, it really seems like this entire experience is kind of dominated by stealth setups. Almost everybody, when they're getting their loadouts, they're going for weapons with suppressors on them, and at least by the second loadout, pretty much everybody is going for the ghost perk. It's just the obvious choice. Yes, a lot of people go overkill first and then they get ghost with their second loadout, but at least by the end of the game, it seems like everybody is aiming to have ghost on their setup. And every time I think of this, I can't help but think that we could have a much more well-rounded experience with more variety and more options of choice when it comes to playstyle if they either nerfed some aspects of the stealth playstyle or buffed some other areas that would encourage usage outside of the stealthy playstyle. Now I get it, in a battle royale, stealth for a lot of people is vital, and I'm not necessarily saying we should completely take away the stealth playstyle. I think that should always be a viable option. I just think for players that maybe want to try branching outside of that stealth playstyle, there should at least be some really viable or solid alternatives to going full stealth. Or at the very least, I don't think you should feel as punished if you do want to branch out and try and go outside of the stealth meta. So that's what I wanted to discuss in today's video. A lot of the things I mentioned in today's video, I have mentioned in various videos in the past, but I did want to put it all together into one topic here so I can share my thoughts and also hear from you guys down below. And I do want to start this off by saying that a lot of my mindset when it comes to this is focused around solo game modes, because I always want to enjoy solo Warzone and I would love to play it more often, but with the way that people tend to play it due to how a lot of the things are balanced, I just find it makes for a terrible experience overall for anybody that would like to be aggressive and go out and be like hunting kills, for instance. One of the most common things I run into in solo modes especially, I don't see this as much in squad modes, is people will literally just sit and camp in a single building and they'll have ghost, they'll have a heartbeat sensor, and they'll basically just sit there and wait for somebody to come by. They'll wait till they hear footsteps, or they'll just have their heartbeat sensor out all the time. They'll wait till they get a dot on that heartbeat sensor, and then they will kill that unsuspecting player before that player can even react and realize that there's somebody there. The feeling that I often get when I play solo game modes is it more so feels like I'm playing hide and seek than anything. And again, if people want to play that way, I think that's totally fine. However, I do feel like the gameplay design currently really encourages and rewards that playstyle more than it should. And I do feel there should be other alternatives for people that want to try other playstyles and be successful. And the three main pillars of this stealth playstyle in Warzone are the ghost perk, the heartbeat sensor, as well as suppressors. So that's how we're going to break this video up. I'm going to go through each of those pillars and talk about various changes that I feel would improve variety a little bit and reduce reliance on these items. And let's start it off with the heartbeat sensor. And the thing about the heartbeat sensor is this contributes to one of the other pillars, which is ghost, because ghost is the counter to a heartbeat sensor. So that makes ghost that much more necessary to be using, and it strongly encourages people to be using ghost, more so than they would if the heartbeat sensor were countered by cold-blooded, for instance. So that's the first option. This has been suggested for a long time. Perhaps make it so cold-blooded is the counter to heartbeat sensor instead of ghost, and that could encourage a little bit more perk variety. Another option that I really like with the heartbeat sensor is I feel like maybe there should be a cooldown time between uses. If you think about the heartbeat sensor in comparison to a stun grenade, for instance, if you choose a stun grenade in that slot, you get literally one stun grenade. Once you throw it, it's gone. You get a one-time use out of that. Sure, if you use it properly, it'll basically guarantee you winning a gunfight that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have won. But like I said, it's a one-time use thing. Whereas with a heartbeat sensor, you can be having that out the entire match if you wanted to. And this goes along with that playstyle I mentioned earlier, where some people will literally just sit in a house, constantly having that heartbeat sensor up, waiting to see a dot pop up on it. If they were to add a cooldown to this, I feel like the heartbeat sensor would have to be used a little bit more tactically. You'd have to think about when you want to use it. And my suggestion would be make it so you can get 1 or 2 sweeps out of that heartbeat sensor every 30 seconds or so. So after you get the 2 sweeps, it could say that it ran out of battery or something. I don't really care what the explanation is. Gameplay over realism is how I always see it. But then 30 seconds later, you get the ability to use it again, and you can get another 1 or 2 sweeps out of it. This would still make it a very useful tool for players that are going around. If they suspect maybe somebody's camping in a house or something, they can pull up that heartbeat sensor. They can get a sweep or 2 out of it just to see, is somebody there? And then they can move on. So those are 2 potential options for this. A third option is keep the heartbeat sensor as is and still make it countered by the ghost perk, However, make it so the ghost perk is more of a soft counter rather than a hard counter. So if there is a ghost user that would be showing up on your heartbeat sensor if they weren't using ghost, instead of giving a dot and the exact distance away from you that ghost user is, just have some sort of a general indicator that lets you know that somebody is within that radius. Somebody using ghost is within that radius, but you don't know where, you don't know how far exactly, just somewhere in the radius. This I think would be great, and it would reduce reliance on ghost at least slightly. However, if they didn't have a cooldown, this might also make the heartbeat sensor way too powerful as that piece of tactical equipment, so they would likely have to combine this alongside the cooldown nerf. But overall, I do think some adjustments to the heartbeat sensor could really go a long way when it comes to improving the overall pacing and flow of the gameplay. But next up, let's talk about Ghost, and this is probably the biggest offender out of all of these. This is one of the biggest reasons that the stealth playstyle is so powerful and so relied upon in Warzone. And with this, there's a few things that I've heard. One thing I've heard from people is they should just make Ghost work like it does in Black Ops games, where it only works if you're on the move. And I personally disagree with this option. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I really don't think the stealth playstyle should be completely taken away from people. And if somebody does want to camp, I think they should have viable options that work for them, as long as there's decent counterplay, and as long as there are other really solid alternatives to that playstyle. So having the Ghost perk only work while moving, I just don't think that would be a good solution for a battle royale at least, because there's always going to be situations where you have to hold your position. That's going to be the best position to hold, and you still want to be taking advantage of the perks that you're using. Instead, I really think one of the biggest solutions, aside from a nerf to the heartbeat sensor, but one of the best solutions to the Ghost perk is, instead of really nerfing the Ghost perk directly, just buff the other tier 2 options. Make it so there's more attractive options for players that may want to branch outside of the Ghost perk. One example I brought up in the past that would also alleviate a lot of the dead silence complaints in the game is buff the high alert perk so it counters dead silence users, so you can hear dead silence users as if they didn't have dead silence. For many streamers out there, I think they would absolutely choose this option over the Ghost perk because a lot of them are constantly having issues with the dead silence field upgrade. Next up, I think something like Point Man could receive a buff maybe. One option I thought of is maybe if you're using the Point Man perk, you've got a higher likelihood of getting cash out of crates. So that could be great for the really aggressive players that want to be constantly just popping UAVs over and over again, like all throughout the match. And they don't really care about being on the radar themselves, but they want to be able to get those UAVs more often and more effectively. Or if it's in a squad-based mode, you could have one player designated as the Point Man player. That's the guy that's going to be opening the crates and trying to maximize the cash for the team. And it would just more clearly define roles within a squad and make things a little bit more interesting. And I really do think this would be viable as well, because we have the kill chain perk, which allows us to get more score streaks out of crates. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to program it so you could get a higher likelihood of getting cash out of crates with using Point Man. Another perk that I would still love to see in Warzone is a perk that allows you to plate up faster. And I know Amped improves your raise and lower time, which technically does allow you to plate up a little faster, but I'm talking a perk that actually speeds up the animation of putting armor plates in. Something like that would also be great, I feel, in the tier 2 slot as an alternative to Ghost for players that, again, would like to be a bit more aggressive and have some other really nice benefit that's really going to be helping them in gunfights, so that they may be willing to sacrifice the Ghost perk in order to attain that perk. Because as of right now, I just don't feel like there are really any viable alternatives to the Ghost perk that many people are choosing, aside from Overkill, like I said, but usually people go Overkill and then Ghost. So yeah, that would be really nice, but another thing that also could be great is have a proper advanced UAV that you can buy at buy stations. They could make it cost quite a bit, maybe like 15,000 cash or something like that. And with this, make it so it shows literally everyone, even if they have the Ghost perk, but maybe make it so you don't show the direction if they've got the Ghost perk, you just show the dot on the minimap. I think that would also be something that reduces reliance on Ghost, or at the very least provides a bit more counterplay to Ghost users, but make it so it's very pricey, so it's not something you can just constantly be taking advantage of. So I think that pretty much covers it for things I'd like to see done to the Ghost perk. Finally, let's talk about suppressors. As it is right now, there is really no reason to not use suppressors 99% of the time. There are very few reasons to not use a suppressor. And the first reason's obvious. For that stealth factor, it keeps you off the radar. You never show a red dot on the minimap for firing your gun, which is massive, of course. That's a very huge benefit. And I don't think that benefit should be taken away. Again, I'm not trying to eliminate the stealth playstyle. I just would like to have viable alternatives for players that want to go outside of that. So I think with the suppressors, the first thing I would like to see done is not even a change to the suppressors, but a change to how red dots appear when you fire a non-suppressed gun. As it is right now, that red dot will appear for anybody that's within 250 meters of you. That's often from one point of interest to another. You can see the exact location of where that player is firing. And I just think that's too high. That's too punishing to be firing an unsilenced gun where anybody in 250 meters knows your exact location when you pull the trigger. So I think the first thing that could be done to reduce reliance on suppressors is just shrink that radius down to 150 meters. That's still a pretty solid radius, but it's not going to be nearly as punishing as 250 meters. Now, this is an accessibility issue where for maybe people that are hard of hearing or they play without audio and they need those red dots to have some situational awareness, maybe keep it so the red dots will still appear on the compass up to 250 meters, but they won't appear on the mini-map unless you're 100 meters or 150 meters away from your target. So that's the first option that I think would make it a little bit less punishing to not be using a suppressor. But I don't think that would be enough. I think the next thing that should be done here is just offer more viable alternatives to the suppressors in the muzzle attachment slot. As of right now, suppressors are just the obvious choice, especially now that they've also buffed the standard suppressors so they improve bullet velocity. Every time I look at that, I keep thinking, why would I ever even bother going outside of the suppressors when they keep me off the radar, which is already a massive benefit. But with the case of the monolithic or GRU or agency suppressor, it also improves recoil, improves bullet velocity, and improves range. Of course everybody's going to be going for that option. Why would they ever even consider going for anything else when that's helping with basically every stat that most players find important in a battle royale? So I honestly think suppressors should lose any bullet velocity benefit. I don't think it should harm your bullet velocity, but just don't give any bullet velocity benefit with suppressors, and instead apply those bullet velocity benefits elsewhere. Apply it on one of the attachments that also helps with recoil. So make it so you either go suppressed, but you sacrifice bullet velocity and also maybe recoil control. You don't get as much recoil control as you currently do. And instead, you could use something like a muzzle brake or the KGB eliminator or a compensator, for instance, that could then boost your bullet velocity and be the only option in the muzzle category for boosting your bullet velocity instead of suppressors, while also helping with recoil. So then you could have a more accurate gun that's going to be having a faster bullet velocity, but the trade-off for that is you're no longer suppressed. Whereas when you choose a suppressor, you have to realize that you're not going to be getting the best bullet velocity possible with your setup, but you can at least be staying off the radar, and again, make it so it doesn't hurt your bullet velocity. I think it would be great if they were to just take a step back and look at that muzzle attachment section and try to balance things out to provide some really viable alternatives to the suppressor that would actually be worthwhile, because as of right now, like I said, there's just no reason to branch away from a suppressor. And with that, that's pretty much it. I really feel like it would be great to see some more viable alternatives when it comes to playstyles, as well as your loadout choices and how those loadout choices will affect your gameplay style. And I also think a lot of the changes that I've suggested here would significantly improve especially solo game modes, because that's where the biggest issue lies in my opinion. But of course, all of this is just my opinion, and I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you guys think about the fact that these stealth playstyles are just the obvious choice at this point in Warzone, and it's sort of what everybody always goes for basically every single match? Are you fine with that? Do you think it plays well as it is and that should stay as it is? Or would you like to see some other viable alternatives come out to play? Would you like to have that choice to sacrifice stealth in order to be buffing yourself in other ways that are actually meaningful and could allow you to approach the game in a different manner? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.